Live from the studio, I'm Jimmy Selesky. Today is Friday, May 31st, 2024. It's a beautiful sunny day here in Baltimore, Maryland, and we are headed into the weekend. But I got to be honest, I am starting to feel increasingly uneasy, genuinely. And I do believe that there are dark times ahead in this country. And I don't say that to be alarmist. I don't say that to make you not click away from the video. I'm used to getting no views. That's fine. I say that because, for lack of a better term, shit just got very real. And I'm kind of confused because I'm watching people talk about this, and there is a tone of seriousness for sure, but the tone of seriousness does not quite match the seriousness of what I consider our current state to be. So it makes me wonder if maybe I'm missing something. Perhaps I'm taking things too seriously. I may be overreacting. I don't know. But just yesterday, on May 30th, 2024, Donald Trump was convicted on all 34 counts of felony falsification of business records, whatever, it was the Stormy Daniels campaign finance case in Manhattan. Now, if you're out there and you are not quite sure exactly what's going on, you just know that this is one of many cases that Trump is involved in at the moment, and you have a basic idea of it. Trump paid Stormy Daniels, quote unquote, hush money to cover up an alleged one-night stand they had in 2006. And this was in some way a violation of campaign finance rules or whatever. That's basically everyone's understanding. And they would like to keep it that way, because really that is the maximum level of understanding it's actually possible to have. Not because you aren't smart enough to get it, not because you have to have a Harvard law degree to understand all the complexities and legal rigor that has gone into this prosecution, but rather because there is nothing to understand. You are trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense. That doesn't make you dumb for not understanding this case. That actually makes you smart. You're not supposed to understand this case. But I want to at least make sure we're all caught up to speed on the bullshit of what they say this case is about. So, in 2006, Donald Trump allegedly has an affair with former and I guess current porn star Stormy Daniels at a golf course, some event, or whatever. When Trump began running for president in 2015, 2016, Stormy Daniels began kind of putting this story on the market, fishing around news outlets to see how much money she could make to sell this story. Trump's team caught wind of it, and Michael Cohen facilitated a hush money payment in order to keep her from taking this story public. So first and foremost, clearly that didn't pan out as planned. Now, Michael Cohen, one of Trump's lawyers working for him at the time, paid this expense out of pocket to Stormy Daniels' people. I believe the exact number was $140,000, in that ballpark. He was then reimbursed, I want to say threefold, over the course of 1 year in monthly installments. It wound up being 12 monthly installments of, if I recall correctly, $35,000, which adds up to $420,000 total dollars that Michael Cohen pocketed from Trump's team as a result of paying the initial $140,000 to Stormy Daniels. So that's triple. That's triple. It was grossed up for tax purposes, other expenses and legal fees and what have you. And the final number came out to $420,000. Now, these monthly installments were listed in Trump's expense books, for lack of a better term, as legal fees, legal expenses. I believe specifically retainer, which is a legal expense. And I argued on the previous episode, the Stormy Daniels episode, that what else would you classify this expense if it's a hush money payment? You don't want to put in the books hush money payment. That defeats the purpose of paying a hush money payment. And it is important to remember at this juncture that paying someone a quote-unquote hush money payment, which sounds way worse than a non-disclosure agreement, an NDA, which is what it really is, just an agreement to not speak on something, which people have all the time if you work for companies and things like that. It's an NDA is standard procedure. It's a normal thing. It's a totally legal transaction that, for one reason or another, that the specifics of this legal fee were not included in the expense books. And here we arrive at the case and the charges. The first allegation is that in paying out of pocket a legal expense for Donald Trump, Michael Cohen effectively made a campaign donation that was not disclosed and may have exceeded the legal amount that you are allowed to donate to a campaign. The reasoning for that is that this payment was made during Trump's campaign for president in 2016, and the hush money payment is argued to have been a campaign expense in order to silence someone that could potentially harm his campaign and also his marriage, you would imagine. Now, Trump actually to this day denies that that encounter ever happened or that they slept together. The campaign finance violation that is being alleged is that, again, in paying an expense for Donald Trump, you have effectively made a donation to Donald Trump. If Donald Trump owes someone $140,000 and I come along and pay it for him, I have effectively given him $140,000. Correct? Sure. Now that is, of course, immediately off the table once you include the fact that Michael Cohen was reimbursed threefold for that expense. That's not exactly how campaign donations work, as far as I'm aware. So that is the first charge, allegation, and why it doesn't particularly make sense. The second allegation, in terms of the falsification of business records, is pretty much a semantical one. And by pretty much, I mean entirely a semantical allegation. This deals with the fact that these payments to Michael Cohen, these reimbursements, I should say, were listed in the expense books as legal expenses, specifically as retainers, if I recall correctly. Now, the reason I say this is entirely semantical is because the net effect of these payments being listed in the bank records as retainer fees, legal expenses, or anything else was zero. There was no net effect. It did not affect how much money he paid in taxes for the payments. It did not affect anything, really. It was a semantical thing that is understandable. I watched a Trump press conference today, and he kind of addressed this, that he had those listed as legal expenses, which technically they are legal expenses. Perhaps not retainers. But again, these are all entries that are made by Trump's accounting team. And it's not that hard to understand why they would do that, because it seems to me that if you write reason for transaction, hush money payment, Was he supposed to write hush money payment so Stormy Daniels doesn't talk about when we had sex in 2006? Should that have been on the bank list? I think not. So instead, they list it as a legal expense, which it is a legal expense. They pay taxes on it. Michael Cohen pays taxes on it. Everything goes as it should. But this semantical error, or shall I say, this semantical hang-up, represents the entirety of the second charge, falsification of business records. And then, of course, you have violating state tax law. And this, much like the previous one, is semantical because taxes were paid on this payment in the exact amount that they would be paid on this payment, regardless of how it was listed in their expense books. So this did not result in an underpayment or overpayment of taxes. It again was entirely semantical. And these three charges are what have been brought before the court in the form of 34 felony counts of all of the above. Two things to remember for context before we move on. First of which is that we are witnessing, or we just did witness, a state prosecute an alleged federal crime. Because the federal agencies that actually would have purview over a potential campaign finance violation, a federal campaign finance violation, being running for federal office, the presidency, did not touch this case because there was nothing there. Anybody who looked at it dropped it. There was nothing to prosecute in the eyes of the federal government, who would actually be the plaintiff party withstanding if this crime had occurred. Instead, this federal violation was prosecuted by the state of New York. Second key point of context before we move on is that the statute of limitations for falsification of business records, which is the crux of this case, is 2 years. This violation occurred in, I believe, 2015 or 16. I believe it's 2024. So by my math, the 2-year statute of limitations has long since expired. Statute of limitations being the window of time you have to prosecute a crime. And every different crime has varying statute of limitations. For instance, there is no statute of limitations on murder. There is no point when you cannot prosecute someone for murder, no matter how long ago it happened. That is not the case for all crimes. And in the case of this crime, you have 2 years. That didn't stop the courts either. Because by some twist of, again, nonsensical logic, I'm not going to attempt to make sense of something that doesn't make sense, they were able to prosecute this conveniently several years after the fact, 5, 6, 7 years after the fact, many years after the statute had expired, conveniently during his campaign for presidency in 2024. The judge, Juan Merchan, ordered that Donald Trump should have to show up every day in court for the entirety of the trial. Trump was also issued a gag order where he's not allowed to speak in detail about the goings-on of this trial, and that gag order is still in place. You have Trump being charged for 3 main crimes. And in order to be found guilty of the nexus of this, falsifying business records, falsification of business records requires intent. It is an intent crime, meaning that it's not enough to just show, oh, they entered something in wrong. No, they have to show that it was done with intent to defraud the government or some other institution. You would have to show that this expense was purposely entered incorrectly in the commission of another crime. There was no other crime. And in a very unprecedented move, by all accounts, after hearing this case, the 12-person jury was instructed that they would have to find Trump guilty of at least one of these crimes in order to prove that he is in fact guilty of felony falsification of business records. And conveniently, it was not necessary that all 12 members of the jury unanimously agreed on exactly what that crime was. Judge Merchan instructed them explicitly that, look, if 4 of you agree that he was guilty of this crime, and 4 of you agree that he was guilty of this crime, and another 4 of you agree that he was guilty of this crime, that's good enough. If all 12 total of you agree that he did commit at least one crime, it doesn't matter that you all don't agree exactly what that crime was. That defeats the whole purpose of a jury and why there's 12 people in it and why they have to agree unanimously in order to deliver a conviction. Now, I don't know if that wound up being the case, if the jury did, in fact, not unanimously agree on any particular crime, but just that a crime happened and 4 of them thought it was this one and a couple of them thought it was this one and a couple of them thought it was this other one. I don't know if that actually wound up being the end result. I'm going to go on a limb and say probably not. Because the fact that Donald Trump was convicted of all 34 felony charges makes me think that this case was already in the bag from the jump. I'm not really convinced there was much legal deliberation going on in that room. Or maybe there was. Of course there was. But the conviction was almost a foregone conclusion, as I'm gathering. From the very beginning of this case, the judge, the district's attorney's office, and every other person involved in the prosecution and conviction of Donald Trump were involved in overstepping every standard procedure, every normal precedent in justice and law, making up rules as they go, and basically conducting a show trial. Make it look like there was something going on that was real, when in reality, there was nothing real about this. So with all that background out of the way, we are now sitting in a place where Donald Trump, again, has been convicted of all 34 counts that he was charged with, and he is now awaiting sentencing. In another amazingly convenient turn of events, his sentencing hearing is scheduled for July 11th. This is just 1 week before the Republican National Convention, where the Republican Party will decide their nominee for president, of which surely will be Trump. And in all likelihood, at the time of that convention, Donald Trump will be in prison. And now we get in to now. Because that is still technically up in the air. I, along with many people, did not take this case seriously because there was nothing serious about it. But now it's very serious. Because once again, our justice system has proven, as I've experienced in my own personal life, and I've experienced several other times in public life, watching things like this go down. This isn't a few good men. This isn't Good Will Hunting where you're going to win. This is, you're guilty. So as ridiculous as this case seemed, as unfounded, unbased, as everyone knew it to be, it turned out that none of that mattered. Because Trump has been convicted, And come July 11th, this year, 2024, I can all but guarantee he will be sentenced to jail. I cannot imagine a circumstance where the powers that be, the people that orchestrated this, would go so far as to prosecute him, run a kangaroo court where they find him guilty of crimes that did not exist, and then stop short of doing what they truly wanted to do all along, which is put him in jail. That is where he's going. And maybe that's the disconnect I was speaking on earlier. Maybe that's why it seems like even the people that I would think would be concerned about this seem a little concerned, but not nearly to the level at which I think would be appropriate. They don't seem nearly as concerned as I feel at this very moment. Maybe because there's still an element of denial that, okay, yeah, he was found guilty, but they're not going to put him in jail. And so we're kind of hanging in limbo, and reality hasn't quite set in that is, of course, the inevitable conclusion of this case. And perhaps on July 11th, when he ultimately is put in prison, it will set in fully. It will set in fully that for the first time in American history, a presidential candidate will be running for office from jail. A presidential candidate will have been prosecuted by his political opponents, because that's what this is, and put in prison in an effort to undermine democracy. That's what this is. You hear about it in other countries. We know the history. We've seen it happen. We've never seen it happen here until now. And it's funny because you don't really know you're in the middle of something historic until it's too late. I have a feeling that people have a different picture of what it is like to watch a person in power prosecute their political opponents and imprison them. And I have a feeling that they imagine it's this blatant, in-your-face, fuck this guy, he's going to jail, I don't care, I'm not even going to give him a trial, blah, 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 blah. No. People have this picture that tyranny is in your face. That they tell you they're fucking you. And everyone just walks around too scared to say that they have a problem with that. But that's not an effective means of controlling people. Throughout history, every bad, egregious, and illegal thing that was done by people in power has been packaged and sold to the public as a good thing. Every single one of them. When Stalin and Mao and Castro imprisoned their political opponents, they were doing it for a good cause. They were doing the right thing. They were doing it for you. When groups of people across the world were put in concentration camps and genocided, the people that were carrying those acts out believed they were doing the right thing. That's what fascism looks like. That's what tyranny looks like. Every country that has watched political opponents be imprisoned was told that those people in power were doing it for them. That the people that they were putting in prison were dangerous, bad for democracy, bad for the country. They were not putting their political opponents in prison saying that these people are good for the country and that's why we're putting them in jail. No, they were saying that they were bad for the country and that's why we're putting them in jail. We're doing this for you. You seem to be under the impression that unless they come out and say, hey, we're going to rule over you and there ain't nothing you can do about it, bitch. You seem to be under the impression that that's what fascism looks like. That's what tyranny looks like. No, not at all. You want to know what tyranny looks like? Look outside. Because we're right in the middle of it, I promise, and I am not exaggerating. And I'm not the one overreacting or being alarmist. This is actually happening. Guys, I didn't make this up. The most likely person to be president of the most powerful country in the world is going to jail 4 months before an election. That's not a coincidence. And if you really zoom out past your political opinions and your lenience and your bias, and you just really think about it on an objective level, Donald Trump is killing it in the polls. He's ahead in every swing state, in double-digit margins in some cases. He's gaining support in virtually every demographic, including demographics that are typically thought of as Democrat strongholds. This is the person that, by all accounts, on a democratic level in this country, will be the president in 2024. And that same person is being sent to jail, in all likelihood. And he's being sent to jail by his political opponents. It's that simple. That's what this is. Does anyone truly believe that Donald Trump, at the age of 77, would be in the midst of all the various court cases and civil lawsuits and allegations that he is undergoing at the moment if he were not running for president, or if he never did? Is anyone under the impression that the prosecution and conviction of Donald Trump is completely unrelated to the fact that he is running for president? Of course not. Of course not. So then you must acknowledge that this is politically motivated. Reality has not set in for most people, including myself, because Donald Trump is still walking a free man. He has not been sentenced yet. But come July 11th, when he is, perhaps then, hopefully then, we will realize that we are in the midst of one of the craziest times in this country. At no point in American history has this happened, ever. Not the Civil War, not the Revolutionary War, never. It's happening now. It's happening now. Right now. We are watching an administration coordinate with the justice system, the media, and other corrupt entities throughout our institutions to eliminate from contention a political threat to their hold on power. And you have to imagine, why are they so concerned with Donald Trump retaking office? Is it because they're scared of what he will do to the country, make it a worse place? Is that really why? Do you really believe that they're doing this for you? Do you believe that? And if so, what historical evidence do you have that shows that the government cares so deeply about you that they are willing to do you the favor of taking away your choice for president? Now, mind you, Donald Trump can still run for president. In fact, in the state of New York, he can vote for himself, despite being a convicted felon. So, this does not eliminate Trump from the election. But I'm at a point now where I don't think any drawn conclusion as a potentiality of where we are now is out of the question. You know, a lot of people don't want to run the risk of going overboard and sounding like Alex Jones, guys that are saying all kinds of things that are like far beyond what we would normally expect. But every day, we are finding that reality is quite crazier than fiction. They've already found him guilty. They're obviously going to imprison him. And at that point, if you think it stops there, you're the conspiracy theorist, in my view. Because what possibly makes you think that it stops there? They didn't stop at any other point. At every step of the way, as it got crazier and crazier and crazier, it didn't stop. And like a frog in boiling water, you know that old metaphor that if you put a frog in lukewarm water and slowly raise the temperature to a boil, he'll never know that he's being boiled alive. And much like that frog in a pot of water being heated up to a boil, you have no idea that every day for the past, really, I want to say 8 or 9 years, the temperature has been rising all around you. And even when it rises to a boil, you are still sitting there boiling alive and you have no fucking clue. This is not a joke, dude. I'm dead serious. I like to joke around on this podcast. I like to have fun. I like to make fun of things. I like to keep a light tone. But I can't today. I can't today because even I did not think it was going to go this far. I had speculated that it could. I had entertained it as a possibility. But just like when the world was shut down on March 15th, 2020 for COVID, one day before, nobody really thought that it was going to go that far. Until it did. Until our lives were changed forever. And we're still dealing with the aftermath of that. And it's still getting worse. Economically, politically, globally. Joe Walsh, rock star and at one time a guitarist for the Eagles, said, "Life in the present seems like a random sequence of events. But when looking back, it all seems like a carefully crafted novel." Everything that's going on right now seems like it's just happening, because it is just happening. And yet it feels like we're living in two parallel universes. I see people talking about this that are obviously not Trump supporters, and they seem to be happy or relieved at the fact that the only other contender to Joe Biden, realistic contender, no disrespect to Robert F. Kennedy, but sorry, the only legitimate contender to challenge our current administration is being put in jail. Probably. And people want to wonder why so many nutcases on the right question the 2020 election, whether or not it was free and fair. Can you blame us? Can you blame people like myself for having doubts about the freedom and fairness of an election with every other thing that we have seen right in front of our eyes that has been proven to be patently true. We saw them lie to us about the origin of COVID and the safety and effectiveness of vaccines. We've seen them lie to us about the border and crime. We've seen them censor information that harms specific people's campaigns or reputation or position. We've seen political commentators that they don't like be sued into oblivion and stricken from the internet, basically, removed from the public conversation for all intents and purposes. We've seen this happening for years. And yet, if you raise any questions, you're a nut. And again, I don't think any conclusion is too ridiculous. Trump can still run for president in jail. You know what else could happen in jail? We could talk to Jeffrey Epstein. He could tell you about it. Seriously. I say this all the time on the show, and I will continue to say it. If a guy in a garage smoking a cigarette can think of something, the billion-dollar institutions and the people in them that are clinging on to power for dear life can think of it. No idea is too crazy. That's where they want you. Well, first of all, you thought that Trump going to prison would be crazy. And that's probably happening. And now you're sitting here thinking, yeah, but I mean, come on, really? They're going to kill him in jail? Well, why are they putting him in jail in the first place? It's not because they think he's a threat to society by listing hush money payments as legal fees, and he just needs to be immediately taken off the streets. No, it's because he's a political threat. That's why he's in jail. And if he's still a political threat in jail, what makes you think they wouldn't take another step? I don't know. Perhaps a lone actor, a rogue guy comes in and kills Trump in prison while he's in Rikers. Another Lee Harvey Oswald. Oh, some random guy just hated Trump and killed him. I mean, we knew this was going to happen. Trump's in jail. Nobody in jail fucks with Trump. The security got caught sleeping or whatever. Somebody got to him. I don't know. What'd you think was going to happen? Oh, we set that up? Of course not. Again, not the first time a president's been assassinated in this country. It is the first time a president's been put in jail in this country. So, in terms of groundbreaking events, this is one of them. This is unprecedented. Trump being assassinated would not be unprecedented. That's actually something that has happened several times throughout the history of this country. So if you think that's crazy, then just imagine how crazy this is, because this has never happened. What we're witnessing right now. We are living in a parallel universe with each other. The left and the right, the conservatives and the liberals, the Trump supporters and the never Trumpers. I don't understand. I personally don't understand it. I can't fathom how you could be living in the same world I'm living in, looking around every day, seeing the state of turmoil our country is in the midst of. The economy, the border, just social unity in general. The global conflicts that have been popping up just in the past few years, coincidentally. COVID, everything. And then you look at a guy like Trump. I heard somebody say this the other day, and it really made me think. It was such a true point, in my opinion. And that was, why is Trump doing this? Donald Trump, up until he ran for president in 2016, had the best life that anyone could possibly dream of. He's a billionaire, successful real estate mogul with skyscrapers with his name on them, country clubs, a socialite, a celebrity. He's got TV shows. Everyone idolizes him. Women love him. Men want to be him. And then at the age of 70-something, he says, you know what? Why don't I fuck this all up and run for president? What need does Donald Trump have to run for president when he's a billionaire? He's done all that. He's dated all the hottest women. He's made all the money anyone could possibly ever need to make, and more. He's accomplished more in one lifetime than most people could accomplish in 100. Regardless of whether or not you want to say, oh, he was given a small loan of $1 million, whatever. Regardless, the point still stands. The guy has had an amazing life. And what motivation does he have to take all that and throw it away so he could become the most despised and targeted and persecuted man in the country? Why would he do that? I don't even understand the logic of what people think is going on. You look at these other politicians like Joe Biden, basically every other career politician, it's clear why they're running for office, because that's how they make their money. They need to stay in office. They need to say and do whatever it takes to get reelected. And then they can use their position to leverage more money from speaking deals and signing this law on the thing, getting a kickback and whatever. That's how they make their money. That's their career. Donald Trump got all that success and more without ever needing to do that. And then all of a sudden, he decides to run for president and go from one of the most beloved, idolized people in the country, making cameos in movies, again, hit TV shows, going out with models, staying at luxury resorts that he owns, and sleeping at the top of a skyscraper that he owns in Manhattan. And he says, you know what? Why don't I become the most hated man in America instead? Why would someone do that? Unless they truly loved this country. Whatever argument anyone says about, oh, he wanted to make more money. Oh, really? That's your argument? This billionaire guy who has made money his entire life not needing to hold a political office, all of a sudden at the age of 70 says, you know what would be a great thing for me is to get that sweet $400,000 presidential salary and, make some sideways deals to get a couple more $1,000,000 here and there, like every other politician does. Why would he do that? It doesn't literally make sense. This entire past decade has been nothing but struggle, pain, vilification, demonization for him and his family. Now he's on the verge of being sent to prison. And he didn't have to do any of this. He didn't have to do any of this. Think about that. If he never decided to run for president, he'd be a normal 77-year-old billionaire with a supermodel wife, a family, real estate all over the world, doing whatever he wants and living out his golden years in the way all of us would want to live out our golden years. But instead, a 77-year-old man is being sent to jail for the gall of challenging the people that really are in control in this country. And instead of joining them like every other person does, or at least staying out of their way, he said, you know what? Fuck all that. I could sit here and coast out the rest of my life and enjoy the fruits of my labor and enjoy my lot in life. But instead, I'm going to throw all that away to make it a better place for everyone else. Not a worse place. Why would anyone do that? Again, why would anyone do that? Unless they were truly driven by a motivation to make the country great again. So when I say we're living in two different universes, I mean that literally. But the difference is, I don't understand your universe. I don't understand your comic book universe where this billionaire supervillain just wants to watch the world burn, throws away all his money, power, fame, and celebrity to become the most hated man in the world so he can make a couple extra $1,000,000 or whatever the accusation is. I don't understand your universe where this guy is suddenly and coincidentally prosecuted for more crimes than any other person has ever been prosecuted for ever. And it all coincidentally lines up with when he decides to challenge the powers that be. I don't understand your universe where the media that tells you what you can and cannot think, where the administration that is currently in the process of eliminating your Democratic choice for president are the good guys. I don't understand that universe. They're the ones that care about you. They're the ones that care about democracy. The people that are imprisoning their political opponents, those are the people that are the good guys? Do you not understand what is going on right now? This, again, this is what tyranny looks like. This is what fascism actually looks like. Everything that they said Trump was going to do, they are doing. They said Trump would never leave office. They said Trump would imprison his political opponents. They said Trump would start wars all over the world. They said Trump would drive this economy into the ground. They said Trump would use his position to make money, inside deals for him and his family and his friends. And every single one of those things that they said Trump would do, he didn't do, and they are currently doing. What universe are we living in? And now we head into November 2024, the election on November 5th, where in all likelihood, we will have an incompetent, incoherent, senile puppet running against a man sitting in jail. And I don't trust the election process. I don't trust anything anymore. I don't know what to trust, and I don't know why I should. And that way of thinking has led me to being right far more often than it's led me to being wrong. So again, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know that he's definitely going to jail, but I'd bet on it. It wouldn't make sense to me otherwise. I don't know if once he's in jail that there won't be some type of rogue lone actor that takes him out. I don't know. I don't know, and neither do you. Just as long as we can accept that it is absolutely a possibility, and we can also accept that nothing is too crazy at this point. I don't know what happens if Trump wins in November. I don't even know if it's possible. I don't know if they would let him win. I don't know. But I can tell you this. Whatever is happening right now does not end well. This doesn't go away. It is either resolved or it breaks down. And I don't even know if it's possible to be resolved. Dark times ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jimmy Selesky. This has been Live from the Studio. Please hit the subscribe button. I promise I'm not always like this, but sometimes I am. New content every Monday through Friday. Till next time. Peace.